A great day for this Wednesday. It's the 26th of August, and it is time to visit with our friend from the Des Moines Register. See, we let you come on here.
You do let me come on here.
Just so you know, just so you know.
Thank you.
It's time for Rekha's Voice, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes.
We get along. We have a tendency to disagree on some things, but we still get along.
You know, the funny thing is there are certain issues on which I disagree with Jason, and there is one issue on which I disagree with you, and I don't think there are any issues on which we
haven't gotten any huge battles.
We haven't gotten into. But anyway, so what I wrote about today is actually touches on an area that you and I have
wait a minute.
disagreed.
She doesn't like the smell of Indian food. I know that. So.
Do we know that? Is that
I'm
true?
inundated with it where I live, so that's the only reason why. I love
Jackie,
India.
Can I switch places with you? I want to be inundated with it.
Come on over.
No
Come
aromas
on
of
over.
Indian
I have
food
enjoyed
wafting.
Indian food, and I do love eating it. Just smelling it all day isn't always my favorite thing.
Okay, but we don't argue about that because it's not a philosophical issue.
Because we hear the great things were happening at the Iowa State Fair with curry.
That's right. On Saturday, there was an Indian curry contest that I sponsored, the Register sponsored, and I was a judge, and we had some really good entries, and it was very fun. So next year, perhaps you'll be
I should go, because I want to smell and taste really good Indian.
Well, I think you smell enough, but yeah, taste amazing is something.
Now you can try it.
Exactly.
All right, so what's going on today?
Okay, so this column today actually touches upon an issue that we were just talking about in a different context going into the opener, which is when someone shows up at a political event or any other kind of event unannounced and starts hurling questions at the people on stage, the moderators, the participants. This is something I know you have a really hard time with, and we were talking about the event last night that Donald Trump hosted in Iowa, at which
Dubuque.
in Iowa, in Dubuque, at which a reporter from the Latino TV station Univision was, I guess, getting in his face. I didn't see the whole thing, so you can tell more about that, but apparently was interrupting him, and he was ejected by Trump from the room. Eventually, he was allowed to come back, and then they had some back and forth discussion. But I was on Saturday morning, right before the Indian cooking contest, at the Iowa Women's Hall of Fame celebration at the Historical Museum in Des Moines. And this is something I try to go to every year because it's a very upbeat occasion where 4 women are inducted into the Iowa Women's Hall of Fame for their accomplishments, and in particular for helping to pave the way for women's equality and access to opportunity in Iowa in various different contexts. So there were 2 former Supreme Court justices this year. There was one businesswoman, and then there was a lieutenant general with the U.S. Army. So right after the beginning sort of introductions had been made, Governor Branstad and Lieutenant Governor Kim Reynolds were there, made a few remarks, and Governor Branstad issued a proclamation declaring it Iowa Women's Equality Day on August 22nd, which was Saturday. And they were about to leave the stage because they had to get to the fair, and this woman came up to the front of the room, and she started talking to Governor Branstad. It was not on the schedule, it was unannounced, and she said, you're talking about women's equality, but there is a law here in Iowa that still protects pedophiles, and I have been trying to reach you for years to get you to talk to me about changing that law. So there was kind of a moment of dead silence around the room, and people were wondering what to make of this. Was this part of the program? Was, she an interloper? Was she violent? Did she have an agenda? And from the back of the room, you could see this man coming down the steps, and it looked like he was going to go and escort her out. But then, a couple of women in the front row who were past honorees were smiling at her. And the governor sort of interrupted her and said, you can contact my scheduler and make an appointment. And she said, but I've tried, and I've tried many times, and my friend has tried. She kept talking. Anyway, eventually, before the guy reached her, she turned around and left. I was sitting in the back row, so of course I rushed out after her and got her contact information because I wanted to know the full story. And I spoke to her on Monday, and she told me really a horrible story about how from the time she was 6 years old until the time she was about 16, so for about 10 years, she was sexually abused by a male relative. And she identified this person, but I'm not going to do that because he's not been charged or convicted, but he is still very much alive and around, and she believes that he is still abusing other young girls. And there was another female relative of hers that she referred me to, who I spoke with, who said that she had also been abused by this man. But there's a statute of limitations in Iowa under the law under which you cannot bring charges if it has been more than 10 years since the time you turned 18. She is 29, this woman. Jessica Henderson is her name. She voluntarily gave her name. She's not, she doesn't feel there's any shame in having been the victim of a sexual assault. And so so this other person could still file criminal and civil charges, but she can't. She missed it by a year. And she said it took her a long time to come to terms with what had happened to her in the course of therapy and to be emboldened enough to speak about it, first to her husband and then publicly in trying to contact politicians. Now, in the last session of the legislature, there was a proposed bill which would have extended the statute of limitations to 25 years after a person turns 18, on the premise that it takes that long to process information, to become emboldened, and to even understand what happened to you and the severity of it and why it matters. So there have been opponents, though it passed in the Senate, but it wasn't even introduced in the House. It never got any traction in the Iowa House. And she wanted to know how the governor felt about it, and she was trying to lobby the governor to support the bill.
Sure.
And so I contacted the governor's office afterwards and said, how does the governor feel about this? And his spokesperson, Jimmy Centers, said, if it reaches his desk, he would certainly consider it, but that he would be willing to talk to Jessica Henderson, or would be glad to meet with Jessica Henderson to get her perspective. And I told her that, and she was ecstatic. And she said, by the way, that she has been following the governor's schedule online, his public schedule, for a long time now, trying to figure out where there might be an occasion that she could meet with him, where he's meeting with the public to talk about this issue.
Right.
And she had read online that he was going to be issuing, that he was going to be talking about Iowa women's equality. And so she thought this was a chance to engage in conversation. So she fetches up in the middle of this huge ceremony, packed auditorium, important women being honored. And she said, she was so single-minded, she just blurted out everything without realizing that, she was interrupting this thing. And later, she said she felt terrible about it, but she said she had just been trying to get the governor's ear. Now, this is a situation where actually some good might have come of this, because the governor's office is interested in and willing to meet with her. And so I wrote about this in my column today, and as I concluded, maybe someday, if changes are made to the law, she will be one of the women who will be up there being honored. They also have an award called the Christine Wilson, excuse me, what is it called? I'm sorry, I'm blanking on it right now, but it's in honor of a woman who died, who was for social justice, equality and justice issues for women. And so, I was thinking maybe that would be something that she might get someday if she's able to advance this issue to a point where it really gets a hearing and people are able to listen to what happens to a victim and how her life, and she says her life has been completely destroyed by it.
I believe it.
She still has severe post-traumatic stress disorder. And one of the things that makes this a particularly harrowing case is she said she had been in a terrible car accident when the abuse began, and her mouth was wired shut. She couldn't move, so she was completely immobilized, and this man was able to abuse her, and she couldn't even move. So you can sort of understand. So tell me, Lou, having heard this, what is your reaction to what she did?
Mine is, in this situation, she went up and she was respectful. You said she did leave. She did not stay there and persist and continue to go on and on and on and make a scene. She got her message out.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with that. I really don't. The guy yesterday at the Trump thing, that one I was on. I'm not even a Trump supporter, and I was on Trump's side yesterday because Trump came up to the podium and he said, okay, we'll take some questions, and he goes and he points over here, and this guy just starts blurting out questions and claims he has the right to do so, which he does, but this was an organized press conference, and he was pointing out who he was taking questions from in order, and this guy just kept on going. That I did not agree with. And then he ended up taking him up because he would not stop yelling questions out. And then he brought him back in. He ended up having a chance to talk to him. That's the kind of thing I have a problem with. What you described is similar, but it's a different situation.
I think, I mean, this is a situation in which a member of the public who has no ordinary access to important people, you know, is looking for any way that she can make her point because she wants to get the law changed, and she's worried about people now who she says are being abused by the same individual.
Well, I wonder why is there a statute of limitations?
Well, there is, because the argument against it, the lobbyists against it, who, by the way, include both the Catholic Church and the American Civil Liberties Union, say that, you know, defendants have, it's so long since evidence is available that defendants can defend themselves on, that, you know, the evidence won't be there anymore. But on the other hand, you know, like any other case that goes before a judge or a jury, the prosecutors would have to provide good evidence, otherwise there wouldn't be a conviction. So my feeling is, you know,